those. So would there be, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted earlier today.
I'll move we approve the minutes as submitted earlier today.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Omid?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Craig?
Aye.
And Brian, yes. Okay, great. Sorry, the virtual roll call is like my least favorite aspect of these meetings. Okay, so here we go, the real meat and potatoes of the meeting. I did want to start off by introducing our lovely town accountant, Ninotchka Rogers, to the group, because we do have some new faces here. Ninotchka, did you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ninotchka Rogers. I've been the town accountant, I think about 6 years. I was the assistant treasurer collector prior to that. And I am also the town accountant in Boylston. So I will say it gives me a unique perspective working for two towns. I kind of, sometimes they do things that I can pull over here or vice versa. So I think it's a positive thing, and happy to support you guys and any questions you might have. And what I will say about the Zoom call is that I don't get Christmas cookies this year, and I'm a little disappointed.
Never say never, Ninotchka.
Ninotchka, how long have you been accountant over in Boylston?
About a year and a half.
Okay, just curious.
So typically what Ninotchka will do is she'll join our budget review meetings for the whole budgetary cycle when she's available, because you'll see that oftentimes we're trying to like make some changes into the budget, or we vote on changes in a given night, and then she'll input those and we can sort of take a look at how it affects the bottom line. We couldn't do what we do without her, so thank you for being here. All right, so what I wanted to do was, before I share my screen, did anybody have any questions or general requests about what they were hoping to cover in the review? I want to make sure this is helpful to everybody.
I looked over it, and I have a whole bunch of questions. Some are just sort of general, and then some are more specific. And I don't want to bog things down with my flurry of questions. So if you're going to go like through each item, maybe just kind of ask them when you hit each one or something.
Sure, that would be great. And actually interrupt at any point with your questions. And if there isn't a great opportunity, if it doesn't relate to something we're looking at, you can mention it anyway. So what I'm actually going to do though is I'll share my screen so that we're looking at the Excel spreadsheet that Ninotchka put together, because I think that's easier than scrolling through each of the separate pages. So just give me 1 second.
And Bob, if you ever have any questions, you can always email me, and ahead of a meeting or something.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, a lot of my questions are probably going to be pretty basic. I'll try to just ask them once.
Well, especially if you've never seen this spreadsheet before, it's a little convoluted.
So I wanted to just quickly start with the revenue tab, because the budget spreadsheets that our town secretary, Jenny Jacobson, made available online, those are the expenditure requests for each of the departments. But I wanted to quickly just say where our revenue baseline comes from. So can you see when I move this? I can't tell if that's okay. So this was the current fiscal year's levy limit. And basically under Prop 2.5, we can increase that automatically 2.5%, which is this figure right here. And then we include an estimate of new growth. So that's things like new construction, new additions, things like that. And that brings us to what we think our overall levy limit for the year is. Then in addition to that, we have debt exclusions, which totaled just north of $1 million. And those debt exclusions combined with this levy limit give us our total allowable levy limit for the year. And then we have some sources of state revenue, not a ton. Like if you look at other communities, you might see much larger numbers. And another thing to note is that some communities where they have a school district that's just a single town, like their school aid would appear in the state revenue portion, but all of our school related state revenue is in the district's budget. So we have a little bit of state revenue, and then we have a fair amount of local receipts, which, the labels here are pretty self-explanatory. These are all estimates, again, largely based on last year's budgeted figures, with I think a couple increases based on collections we've seen so far. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the town administrator does call a meeting in January with the town hall's finance team, and we drill into these estimates a little bit more. And so you may see, well, you probably will see a revised version of this revenue spreadsheet as we get going. So we add up total estimated local receipts. We have some other available fund sources, which I won't get into all the details right now. But basically, all of that ties back into the overall budget summary, where we have our total estimated revenue of $27.8 million. Then this total right here, the operating expenditures, that's the total of all the budget sheets that you saw online. And then, we've got warrant articles with free cash and borrowing. We get our total expenditures. And as of right now, the spreadsheet that we've got, it's still early, it includes a lot of, I guess I'd call them plug numbers because we don't even have the real figures yet. We are $2,300 out of balance as of tonight. And Nanochka, do you want to add anything to that?
A lot of it is still, like you said, preliminary. We don't have health insurance. We don't have, retirement, and, school is the biggest driver of our budget, and we don't have that until March. So, and the revenue estimates haven't really done anything with them yet. So it's still very top level.
Yep. Okay, so now I think we can just switch over to the expenditures tab. And I'm going to hide some of these columns just to make it easier to see. Okay, and so this is our entire operating budget, and it's broken up into general categories. So the first ones that we're going to go through are general government. We will be getting a request, or I think I've already seen a request for $50 from the moderator, so that'll get updated to be $50. And again, jump in at any point if you have questions about these budgets. The next budget is the selectmen's budget, and the total requested is no change from the prior year.
Okay, Brian, we're up to my first question.
Great.
So this is a general question, but dues shows up in a number of categories. What dues are we talking about? And then also, what is wheat under selectmen?
Yep, sure. So I'll answer wheat first. Wheat is a program, I think, headquartered in Clinton, but it's a community program that services a bunch of towns surrounding us, and gives out food,
right,
other subsidies. And so the town and the selectmen have an annual commitment that they give to wheat that essentially subsidizes some of the services that Bolton residents take advantage of. Professional and associational dues. So for example, I think the selectmen are part of the Massachusetts Municipal Association. There may be some other professional organizations that they're a part of. And I think Nanochka might know this off the top of her head, but there might even be I want to say it's something for either the town administrator or town secretary that may be funded out of that line as well. But I know for us, we have a dues payment to the Association of Town Finance Committees. The town planner has a dues payment.
So they're all professional associations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head exactly what's in there, but I'm sure Jenny and Don, when they come in.
No, I mean, that's good enough for me.
Okay, so then moving along, the next budget is the town administrators, which The requested amount, again, is year over year flat. Oh, and this is actually probably a good time for me to just mention, as we are going through this budget, you should be aware that in the budget request letter that went out, we asked that cost of living increases not be included upfront. And so this budget, you don't actually see, like in prior years, we would have typically a 2% cost of living increase that would go into the salary and wages of the town's employees. And this year, that was withheld at the beginning of the process so we could see where we were, like what does the budget look like in this difficult year? And so that the budget decision makers would have a sense of what the impact of a cost of living increase would be. And we can talk about that when we get there, but you'll see, like, if there's a 0% increase year over year for the town administrator, that does not include a potential cost of living increase, which, you know, might be recommended as we get closer to the process.
Brian, that next random question. What's the 60,000 for compensation reserve?
No, so that's sort of related. The town administrator and the board of selectmen are involved in negotiations with different unions, and so it's reserved because a lot of that doesn't get finalized until later.
Okay, got
it. This is our massive budget, $185.
Don't spend it all in one spot.
Yeah. We do actually, this is our reserve fund budget, which we pretty much always set at $100,000.
So the reserve fund budget, it has to be extraordinary and unforeseen in order for advisory to allocate some of those funds. So if something completely out of whack comes up, and they'll come to the finance committee in order to tap into this money, but it can't be for something just, you know, it has to be something for unforeseen reasons.
Yep. Town accountant. Oh, that's right, because the audit went back down to 1650.
Oh no, that should be 20.
Oh, should it?
Yeah. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, well, so now we know. So
20.
The audit for FY22 should be $20,000. Okay.
I see.
Anyway.
I see there's an increase in salary there. Apparently, that's not cost of living.
Right, that's a step increase.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have different grades, and there are 10 steps within the grade. So you'll see some people do have an increase if they still have steps within their grade.
Who makes those decisions on when people advance in a step? Is that the Board of Selectmen do that?
So they're hired into, I can send you guys the classification plan. So for me, for instance, town accountant, I forget which grade I'm at, but so I was hired into this grade, and you start at, say, step 2, you'll continue to go until step 10. And I'd say most of our employees have it listed out on the schedule. And that was done, I think we did, Brian, do you remember when it was? I think it was with Donna that we did a study to kind of make sure we were in line with all the other towns around us. But It's been a while.
And do department heads decide when someone advances it to the next step? Or?
No, every year, July 1st, you go up.
Oh, you go up every year. Everyone advances one step every year.
That's right.
Oh.
Okay, Board of Assessors. The request that we'll see that when we call them in, we'll be able to ask questions where they can explain a little bit more about, you know, what goes into the purchase of services and all that. The treasurer budget is up 3.3%. Tax collectors up a little bit year over year. Human resources, actually, that also relates to Bob, what you were saying. So as best as I understand it, the wage classification is something that is administered by our human resources director, who is also our treasurer. And so she's also able to answer a lot of questions about that. Nanachka, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. Legal services. So this is one that sometimes we tweak as the year goes by, because there are years when we blow through this budget and we know that we're going to, but we just don't know enough yet to say whether this is one of those years. So we've left it at the 50,000.
We're going to blow through that.
Oh, okay. Wait, but for FY21 or FY22?
21.
Okay. MIS, this is basically all of our computer systems for the town. And that is, you'll meet them when they come in, but we hire a company, CM Geeks, to do that, and they're down 2.5%. Town clerk is basically flat. Elections are down, unsurprisingly, because 2021 is an off year. And the street listing is pretty much the same. Conservation Commission, also relatively flat year over year. I think all the increase is related to a step increase. Same with Planning Board. I think the only increase you see there is in wages based on a step increase. Budget, Agricultural Commission, they've had this budget for I don't know how many years. There must be a story behind it, right, Nanachka? Like the 1746 is some special
I think
year.
It used to be 1750, and I couldn't tell you why it went to 1746. They didn't spend any of it last year.
Yeah, so that's something we may want to ask about, what their plans are for this year. Mm-hmm. Economic development, $1,000, and then town buildings has been level funded so far, and town hall down just a little bit. The building insurance, we have this listed here because it used to be broken out separately, but now it's all wrapped up into our bigger insurance line items in the 900s. So we'll see that later. And then the town reports. Nanachka, am I right that the reason we're not paying postage on that is because it goes out automatically with the Independent now, the free copy of the
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jenny did last year.
Okay. So again, this preliminary budget, our total general government is down 0.5 percentage point from 2021 to 2022. So hopefully we won't see any huge changes to tick that up over the next few weeks. The public safety building is broken out separately, but you'll see our police chief and his administrative assistant will present this budget, and they'll go through the numbers for us. It looks like that's up a little bit, especially in the energy requirements.
Ryan, can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So telephone in general, when you look at, there's probably 4 different places that have a telephone budget, and it adds up to somewhere around like $30,000 for the town for telephone services. That seems like a lot for phone services. Is there like something special about the phone service?
There is for the public safety building. So and we can ask Chief Nelson to explain this a little bit more, but the phone system that they have at the public safety building is, for lack of a better term, a lot more sophisticated than what we would have in any other building in town, because there's a lot of private information and they need to be able to transmit sensitive stuff over the lines, and it's integrated into some software. So that's also why they have a lot of software support and other services that we don't do through CM Geeks, which is the town's like MIS general person.
Yeah. Seems like even DPW has like $6,000 or $7,000 budgeted for phone services.
Yeah, so we can ask Mr. Hegelin about the costs for that, but I think that some of that has to do with cell phones too for the.
I think so too. I think the radios I think they use their cell phones as radios in the trucks, but Randy would.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Actually, while I think of it, Bob, if you have these questions too, and after the meeting, if you've written them down and you can email them to me, I'll make sure that I include them in the minutes too, so we know to follow up on stuff.
Well, I mean, are all of these questions more appropriate when we talk to the individual departments?
Yeah, no, what I meant is it'll be in the minutes that we want to follow up when we meet with the individual departments.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the police department budget is long, so I wanted to give people an opportunity to ask questions about like just things that they see that may not be obvious.
Hey, Brian.
Yep.
Are the police and fire under that same salary step program?
No, they have a contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian, again, I have a couple questions. A couple things. Can you scroll down a little bit further? Why? So I guess I don't really get why there's like a cruiser repairs. Okay. Cruiser supplies. Okay, I guess I can maybe imagine what that might be. And then there's 5850 is equipment / cruiser. And then 5870 is cruiser purchase. So any idea what 5850 might be? And then why is cruiser purchase not a capital request, and why is it budgeted in here?
Yep. So the equipment / cruiser, this 5850, covers the stuff that you buy in addition to a cruiser that makes it equipped to be a cruiser. So Chief Nelson could probably give you some more details, but there are certain lights that they have.
Computers.
Yep. Yeah, they outfit it with basically different things that they need in order for it to be safe. So that would be for a new cruiser. And then the cruiser purchase, that's a great question. Nanachka might know the history better than I do, but there was a decision made before my time on advisory to bake this purchase into the operating budget because it was such a regularized purchase. And that's, I don't know when it happened, but it was
pre-me. I think, it was just a decision that was made.
It seems like when we go back, I'm looking at some of the prior years, it looks like there's been a cruiser purchase like every year, 18, 19, 20.
Yep.
Are we really buying a new police cruiser every year?
Yep, we have been.
Cruisers have a hard life, and they also usually get retired to some other purpose in the town.
How many do we have?
And that being said, it's not like this isn't a decision that can be reevaluated year to year, right? So this is exactly the type of thing that we talk about and should talk about with the police department when they come in.
And Chief Nelson probably has a plan, right, for a long-term plan for cruisers and when he expects them to retire and when he needs new ones. I'm sure.
I would assume so.
Yeah, and I think one of his lieutenants may be sort of the person in charge of tracking all that and keeping track of the plan, but he'd certainly be able to answer questions about it. Okay, so then the next department under public safety is our fire and EMS department. And just seeing, that's down a little bit year over year. Although, Nanachka, do you happen to know off the top of your head, like which contracts are being negotiated? Actually, never mind. We don't even need to get into it right now. all I'm saying is that like some of these numbers may change as we get further along in the process. Because as best I know, none of these wages are reflective of any potential agreements, right?
Yeah, nothing. Basically, they're all the same as last year, except for a step if they are owed one.
Should we be expecting lower ALS service beyond the 20,000 since we have our own now?
I don't know. That'll be a good question for Jeff. I think he'll have a whole presentation on the ALS, I believe, when he comes in.
I'm sorry, what is ALS?
It's Advanced Life Support Services.
So basically,
probably could say more.
Yeah, we outsourced. So if somebody needed an ambulance, we used to have Woods EMS be our ambulance provider, our advanced. We were basic life support. I believe this is the case. And they were our ALS provider, and they decided they were not going to do it anymore. So Bolton now is going to be its own ALS provider, and we're in the process of ramping that up.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Should we not also be expecting payments from, say, Harvard and Lancaster for doing that?
Yep. Exactly.
Hopefully
Is that like
up.
Sorry, Omid, you had a question?
Oh, is that something that like the selectmen and stuff working on it and the fire chief, or is this like deal that's already done?
It's a done deal, and I actually believe that it's going live.
Okay.
Now, kind of, essentially, maybe the first of the year.
I think I saw something on Facebook from the fire department today that they had their first ALS call under the new system that went out this morning.
Are those payments from Lancaster and Harvard going to show up in our budget somehow?
They will go into that ALS revolving fund that we set up last year.
So what's this 20 ALS service then, the 20K? Is this like the existing that we already owe, or?
I don't know if we're still going to have payments that we'll need to make. Jeff will definitely know a lot more about this. I'm unsure.
Okay, moving along, building inspector, that's staying the same. Plumbing and gas inspector, wire inspector, those are all staying the same. 291 emergency management, that is actually the code red system, right, Nachka, where we get those, we've gotten a lot of use out of code red this year.
Yes.
Those automated phone calls that you get from the town. Animal control officer, no change. Traffic lights, no change. Tree warden, no change. And then regional dispatch. Nanachka actually serves on the finance committee for our regional dispatch, and she tells me that this number is an initial number from their budget meeting sessions, but it's not necessarily a final number.
Yeah, we've only had one meeting so far, so that's definitely not set in stone.
So we see that the total public safety budget as of right now is a 2.97% increase from the prior year. Education, all of these are just plug numbers that Nanachka put in. So she just used a 4% assumption for now. Obviously, we're hoping for something considerably less than that. But
yeah, a lot less. But I figure worst case scenario. You start with the.
I mean, let's hope this is the worst case scenario.
It can't be higher than 4.
Right. All right, so then the total education, again, placeholder, 3.89% increase. Now we're into the public works section, where you'll see that is 1.68% increase. And I think most of that is in wages. But one thing that I'm going to want to ask about is remind me, Nanachka, are any of these unionized or?
All of it is, except
Okay.
for Leslie.
Okay. The construction and maintenance budget has been level funded. Any questions so far? Now we get to snow and ice, which you probably have noticed that it's been set at 180 for a long time, and that's the number that we use. It's the one area where you are allowed to spend a deficit because it is so unpredictable, and so I think the town has made a decision to keep it at this 180 figure because it's kind of like somewhat reflective of an average of the actual reality. It's unlikely we will change this number, let's put it that way. No change here.
And once you raise it, you can't put it back down. So
Good point.
Why is that?
the rules, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
Is that like because of the union? It's like a deal they made, or is it like?
No, Matt, I don't know if it's a mass general law. I'd have to look into, or if it's Department of Revenue. It's at the state level.
Like a DOR regulation or something.
Right. Yeah. I'll find out.
Thank you.
There's a bunch of interesting detail behind these like well monitoring and sewer lines, but I'm gonna save the surprises for our meetings with the department head. But you'll see that those have all been level funded for now. And total public works budget is increasing 1.27%. Human services, relatively small portion of our budget. The biggest component here is for our Board of Health administration, and also we pay to be part of the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, which gives residents access to certain services. A lot of the services are performed through in conjunction with the Council on Aging and the Senior Center at the Country Manor. And then Council on Aging budget is up 4% in the request over last year. And we'll have Lisa come in and talk all about that. But it's a relatively small portion of our overall budget, considering like almost 20% of our residents are senior citizens. Veteran services is being level funded. And then this was a line item that we'd had a few years ago, which was zeroed out. But I forget, it has to stay in the budget for a certain number of years, right, Nanachka?
Just to keep it until those, like I think it's actual 2018 and 2019. So when those fall off, it'll go away.
Yep. All right, so there's the total for human services. Culture and recreation, the biggest chunk here is for our library, which is being level funded. Parks and Rec is a 4% increase. That's the request. Historical Commission is level funded. And Memorial Day celebration, which may look different this year depending on the status of things. So we can talk to them about that. But this total budget, culture and recreation, is increasing, 0.35%. Not going to spend a ton of time on the debt service portion, just because like this will change depending on like what the recommendations from us and the Board of Selectmen are for borrowings this year. But I believe what Nanachka has done is down here, you'll see she sort of plugged in figures, assuming like approval of the requests. So we do have them
Yeah,
built
I
in.
figured the big ones I just put in as borrowings, just an assumption.
Yep. All right, we're almost at the end of the operating budget, so thanks for powering through us. This is the retirement assessment, and Nanachka is using a 10% estimate for now. We'll get actuals, I want to say sometime in February, right?
January,
Okay.
mid-January.
And workers' comp, that's an insurance payment. Group health, we're using a 10% estimate for now. We should also be getting those numbers in January or February. And then the Medicare tax is just a function of payroll. So total employee benefits projected to increase about 8%. But again, like, who knows, maybe we'll have a great health insurance renewal and this won't be 10%.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
We'll see. And then, all of our, I mentioned those building insurances earlier. All of those are now wrapped up in under the 945 account. And I think, Nanachka, you said that we have to shift some of these numbers up one line because they're off.
Yeah, they're supposed to be in that general insurance line. They need to go up one level
Yep. Okay.
instead of being police professional liability.
But typically what will happen is our town secretary and town administrator will come in and explain what the quote is for that year, what the renewal is for that year. Do you know off the top of your head whether these are quote unquote real numbers?
I think they are. I think Jenny got numbers. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Can you hear my husband screaming? Is it just me or okay?
It's all in your head, Nanachka.
They're downstairs just yelling. I don't know why.
All right. So what Nanachka has done here is she's basically like isolated all of the salary and wages. And this is a way for us to figure out what portion of our budget is going to salary and wages versus other expenditures. And then she's also shown down here what the different cost of living increases would be for this year. All right, so before I move off of the operating budget, did anybody have any questions so far? Okay, and then I wanted to say a little bit about the capital planning process before we talk about the articles. So this year, like last year, our town administrator is going to kind of take the lead on working with the department heads and getting all the information we might want about the different proposals. So I don't want us to go into a ton of detail tonight on what each of the requests are, but we will have an opportunity to ask the department heads questions when we meet with them. And then we'll also have, I think probably in early March, a final meeting with our town administrator to get his recommendations for the capital requests. But they're all pretty much captured here in the articles tab. And I'll just magnify this for a second. So the unpaid bills is a placeholder because there's usually like a de minimis amount of unpaid bills we need to add to the warrant. The town common security cameras, the body cameras, and the cruiser cameras are all requests that you probably saw from the police department. The new ambulance is a request from our fire and EMS department. You'll see that the proposed funding for that shows up here as other avail, which is other available sources. And in this case, it would be ambulance receipts reserved because we have ambulance receipts and they accumulate specifically for the eventual purchase of a new ambulance. So some of these other, I don't want to call them smaller ticket items, but they are things that we could use available free cash to pay for rather than a borrowing. The building assessment is a proposal from our new DPW director to basically get sort of a town-wide plan and assessment for all municipal buildings. So we'll be able to ask him a lot of questions about that. Library replacement is a request of the DPW, I think in conjunction with the library trustees. And then a DPW plow truck. And Nanachka, do you want to say a little bit about the proposed financing of this?
So this is my understanding, and I honestly haven't had a chance to speak to Randy about this, but it's my understanding that we'll be able to use some of our Chapter 90 money for most of the purchase. And I don't even, that split is probably off, but I just had to put something in. It could be more toward, he basically said the stuff that related to the plowing portion couldn't be used for Chapter 90. We would have to pay for that stuff. And that could be 10,000, 20,000. I'm not exactly sure. He'll have a better plan. So that's my understanding so far.
So basically there's like the vehicle, and then there's the stuff that's plow specific, and
Yes.
that can't be paid with Chapter 90, but it's like the vehicle itself probably can be.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. Now these proposed capital projects we've put under potential borrowings, and there's the fire truck that Chief Legendre is requesting, and then a second DPW truck, which off the top of my head I can't remember what it would be used for. I'd have to go back and look, but
Neither.
we can talk to them about it.
Right, and all these things can change, borrowing, free cash, this is just plugging in just to start.
Brian, can I ask a general question about the articles?
Yep.
How do they make their way onto the warrant, or can any department make a capital request and it just appears on the warrant and the town votes on it?
That's a great question. So the Board of Selectmen have control over what goes on to the warrant. And so they will vote to place a request on the warrant if they want to see it go before the town. There is a citizens petition way to get things on the warrant, but typically this sort of stuff, I believe the town common was a citizens petition.
Okay.
The purchase of the town common was a citizens petition, but so what would happen is, the Board of Selectmen might vote to put the fire truck and the DPW truck on the warrant.
Okay.
We also make a recommendation,
Right.
but we can't, right, Nanachka, we can't put something on the warrant without the Board of Selectmen, so.
Right.
But the long range planning and the trades, for example, if you were going to say, well, we can afford one of these trucks this year and not all of them, the selectmen will kind of get together and decide, let's put the plow truck forward as this year's vehicle purchase, for example.
Well, everybody's supposed to submit a 5-year plan. We have been doing that, and we had a capital planning committee, and it kind of fell apart last year. And then with COVID and everything, Don just decided to take it on again this year. But I think eventually the plan would be to have an actual capital planning committee. And because do you remember, Brian, we were starting to get these 5-year plans, and to your point, like, okay, we could look and say, 2025 is a terrible year. Let's push this off.
Yep. Yeah,
also,
go ahead.
We also sometimes chat it over. It doesn't necessarily have to fall to the Board of Selectmen. We'll talk to the DPW and say, you're only going to get one truck. Which one do you want? Or which one's more urgent, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there's a prioritization that happens.
And at least in the past couple of years, it has been, I feel like the last 2 years at least, the Board of Selectmen ended up coming to the meeting where we talked with the town administrator about the capital plan recommendations. So it was sort of like everybody was in the room talking about it together, which I think is helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And that's it for now. We just kind of wanted, the whole purpose of this was to get you oriented to the the format of things and the overall summary. So I hope you felt like you, oh, actually, now that I'm looking, I realized I did want to mention this. So every year in the mid to late fall, the Department of Revenue certifies our free cash. So this year, that 685, that's the amount of free cash that's been certified for the Department of Revenue that we can use for this upcoming year's budget. And all right, so before we close out, does anybody have any questions about either this or the schedule or the process? No. Good. Well, I really appreciate your time. And if anything occurs to you between now and January 12th, when we start meeting with folks, please let me know. So we can always like ask department heads, submit questions to them in advance of the meeting if there's things you really want them to get into. I just try to do all of that through me just to keep stream of communication clear, but let me know and then I'm happy to do it.
And sometimes that's a good idea to give them time to research something, rather than being asked the question at the meeting. It's like, oh, I have to go back and look. If they can bring that information with you, saves you guys time.
Yeah. So for example, I'll definitely give the police department a heads up about fleet questions, cruiser purchase. I'll raise the issue of telephone, both town-wide and with the police department and the DPW, all of that stuff. So any other things like that you want me to kind of ask them to do a little bit of homework for us, I'm happy to do that. Okay. Well, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, and I'll do a roll call. Omid has said yes. He's like saying yes before I'm even asking. I love it. Bill?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Craig? Yes. And Brian, yes. And thank you again, Nanachka, for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, everybody, enjoy the holidays and Happy New Year.